In some way, Thomas Markle hopes that his daughter and son-in-law will see this story, accept his remorse for previous humiliations, and hear his request to be included in his grandchildren's life. Despite years of familial strife, Harry has mostly remained mute. However, everything was altered by Thomas Markle's most recent disclosure. There is more to the notion of a hidden abandoned infant than mere rumors. Identity, trust, and the very reality Harry has attempted to defend are all attacked. He is suddenly forced to face an unavoidable question as the public narrative he constructed clashes with a private reckoning. Can he still be protected by quiet, then? Or is it time to make a statement? The world will be shocked by what Harry reveals next, so stay tuned. Thomas Markle's accusation. Thomas Markle has made accusations against his daughter that are considerably more serious than ingratitude, harshness, or distance. He's not referring about missed calls, contrived paparazzi pictures, or being excluded from a royal wedding this time. He is claiming that Meghan Markle completely deleted that period of her life by abandoning a child when she was young. This isn't family drama if it's factual. It's a moral breakdown. The character of this accusation is what distinguishes it. Past disputes might be written off as resentment, miscommunication, or a strained parent-child bond exacerbated by celebrity. This assertion cannot be dismissed with so ease. Meghan's whole public narrative is reframed, from her meticulously crafted history to the image of advocacy and compassion that has come to characterize her worldwide brand. This has nothing to do with damaged feelings. It has to do with accountability, hiding, and the potential for a life that is purposefully concealed. The weight of Thomas Markle's remarks stems from fatigue more than rage. He didn't sound like a man out for retribution. He sounded as though he was carrying a secret that he claims to have assisted in keeping. His tone was both regretful and accusing when he mentioned the child, who might now be a teenager. He presented himself as someone who acknowledged failing in addition to being a father who had been wronged. Observers were more alarmed by that acknowledgement than by the accusation itself. It implied that this was a long-delayed confession rather than an impulsive outpouring. It's all about timing. The Sussex story is already tense when this accusation is made. Credibility has become brittle currency, projects are scrutinized, and public sympathy has diminished. It also occurs at a time when Prince Harry's post-royal persona is based on veracity, openness, and emotional candor. The context is important. Such a report might have been suppressed years ago due to media hype or palace protection. It explodes in public these days. For this reason, everything was altered by the accusation. The public is not asked to choose a side in a family dispute. It makes you ask a much more awkward inquiry. What if the narrative that everyone agreed upon was purposefully lacking? And who could have known? Who provided assistance? And now that the truth has finally demanded air, who is trapped by it? Why did this information come to light now, therefore, if Thomas Markle had been carrying it for years? And what made him speak at last? Remain with us. Thomas Markle's reason for speaking now. Thomas Markle was viewed as a supporting character in a much bigger royal drama for many years. A man written off as temperamental, untrustworthy, or driven by resentment. But in order to understand why he decided to speak now, one must go past his fury and consider the situation. Caution can be stripped away by age, loneliness, and sorrow. Furthermore, Thomas Markle acknowledges that his time is running out. Thomas has since retired to Mexico and lives mostly in isolation on a rocky cliffside just south of the California border. His world has become more constrained. His condition has deteriorated. For years, he has lost contact with his daughter and grandchildren. There are no private explanations, no quiet phone conversations, and no way to reintegrate into the family. In his view, the door has been forever closed. According to insiders, this seclusion played a major role in his choice. Silence becomes a sign of surrender rather than loyalty when a guy feels he has already lost all that matters. The fact that Thomas Markle does not only portray himself as a victim complicates the situation. He presents his remarks as both an admission and an allegation. He talks about overprotecting his kid and condoning conduct that he now feels ought to have been addressed. That change is important. This isn't a father acting rashly. It's a man admitting his involvement while revealing what he says was hidden. Because of this dual function, onlookers characterize his remarks as a combination of exposure and confession. Thomas Markle consciously walks the fine line between regret and revenge. On the one hand, regret is evident. He talks about lost years, unmet grandchildren, and an erased family. On the other hand, his timing is accurate. The accusations surface at a time when Meghan Markle's credibility is already eroding and her command of the narrative seems to be waning. The timing raises suspicions that this is a calculated disclosure rather than merely an angry outburst. Thomas Markle, according to those who have long monitored the family dynamic, reached a breaking point. He was getting close to 80, confronting his own mortality, and seeing his daughter's story become part of history. He seems intent on abandoning his version without him. Not to mend the relationship but to challenge a narrative that he feels is untrue. In this way, legacy is more important at this time than reconciliation. That's why his remarks were so impactful. They weren't leaked through middlemen or yelled in fury. They sounded straightforward, almost resignation-like. It sounded to many like a guy letting go of his burdens before it was too late. Thomas Markle spoke now because, in his opinion, there was nothing left to lose and nothing left to defend, whether motivated by remorse, rage, or a need for the truth to survive him. Was that chapter, however, ever really closed or kept hidden on purpose? To find out, keep watching. Examined are the Northwestern years. Thomas Markle's story doesn't start with a press conference or a palace. According to reports, it started years ago in the academic hallways of Northwestern University, where Meghan Markle attended from 1999 to 2003. Those years have traditionally been portrayed as early independence, theatrical studies, ambition, and a formative but straightforward period of life. They are currently being re-examined as the potential source of a meticulously hidden chapter. Thomas Markle's accusation was accompanied by assertions that this time span encompassed more than just schoolwork and college life. A serious relationship with a fellow student, later identified as Joseph Giuliano in web investigations, was purportedly involved. According to the story, this was a committed relationship that resulted in a modest, extremely secretive marriage rather than a short-lived college romance. It was a hastily planned and purposefully modest event, purportedly because of an unforeseen pregnancy, rather than a public union or celebration. This tale is contentious not only because of the relationship itself but also because of how it is supposed to have ended. The idea focuses on an annulment rather than a divorce. That distinction is important. A marriage is not dissolved by an annulment. It states that it was never legitimate. It's a reset button that may minimize paper trails, remove records, and let both parties continue on as if the union never happened. It's both legal and religious. An annulment would be significantly more beneficial than a divorce for someone who was determined to start over without obvious connections to a past that no longer matches their path. The theory's proponents contend that this explains a number of gaps. After graduation, biographies thin down, chronology get hazy, and personal details become ambiguous. Divorce would make people wonder. Almost nothing is raised by an annulment. It also supports the argument that strong families and legal clout might have made sure the procedure was completed quickly and discreetly, particularly if futures and reputations were at risk. The purported annulment is crucial because it offers a way for a marriage and maybe a child to vanish from public records without being clearly contradicted. Additionally, it reinterprets Thomas Markle's subsequent remarks regarding safeguarding his daughter. Cooperation, stillness, and a mutual understanding that would never be acknowledged again would be necessary if such a procedure occurred. Crucially, none of this has been validated. The Northwestern years, however, are currently the subject of intense attention since they are the only period of time where what Thomas Markle proposes is conceivably possible. Before renown, before nobility, before a well-crafted public persona became firmly established. What then fits into those years of silence when no one asked any questions? Let's investigate. Nobody can account for the child. It is not a paper, a marriage record, or a timing issue that is at the heart of this controversy. It is the purported presence of a child whose life, if the allegations are even partially true, took place completely apart from the public narrative that the world is aware of. This is the point at which conjecture becomes more intense. Because a child leaves behind one inevitable marker, time, unlike rumors about romances or career changes. Although it is well written and consistent, Meghan Markle's public biography is not comprehensive. There are periods between the end of her time in college and the beginning of her acting profession that are summarized rather than thoroughly chronicled. Advocates claim that this is typical. These gaps, according to critics, are crucial because they are the only windows in which the accusation might conceivably fit without going against established dates. The questions are sharpened by age estimations. The alleged youngster would be in their early to mid-20s today if they were born in the early 2000s. Despite their ambiguity, Thomas Markle's remarks point to a younger person, possibly a teenager. Rather from ending the debate, that disparity has stoked it. Did you misremember the timeline? Did the birth occur later than anticipated? Or are these approximations purposefully vague in order to avoid naming details? Every option encourages closer examination rather than less. The absence of denial, not the absence of evidence, is what heightens suspicion. The claim has not been directly and thoroughly refuted. Silence is frequently a calculated tactic in high-profile situations. Legal teams advise not responding to unsubstantiated claims in order to prevent giving them credence. But there's a price for silence. When there is no explanation, conjecture takes its place. In an effort to balance what is known with what is purported, online communities analyze yearbooks, images, interviews, and casual remarks. Importantly, no verified witness, no verified identity, and no written evidence of such a child exist. That fact needs to be made very obvious. However, the accusation endures since it is hard to refute something that has allegedly been removed. Absence, missing documents, missing years, and lacking justifications are all cited in the idea. Furthermore, absence is a well-known source of speculation. Perception is also impacted by silence. It appears to be restraint to skeptics. It appears to believers to be avoidance. Perception frequently triumphs over fact in scandals fueled by uncertainty. The people who are already inclined to think the worst use every inquiry that remains unanswered as confirmation. For this reason, the story's emotional center is now the purported child. The idea itself compels uncomfortable contemplation, not because there is evidence. If false, it symbolizes the brutality of gossip culture. If accurate, it is a serious moral transgression. The infant that no one can explain continues to be a symbol of all the unanswered questions surrounding this debate until clarity is found, either way. Because no one is talking, there is an unsolved question that won't go away. But what happens when Meghan Markle's background collides with the memory of the internet, if silence either conceals or generates truth? Remain with us. Internet detectives and digital breadcrumbs. The probe has moved to the one location that seldom forgets, the internet, while official records remain mute. Without editors or gatekeepers, online communities started going through old postings, stored profiles, and forgotten screenshots to find anything that could bolster or refute the accusation. They claim to have discovered digital breadcrumbs, which are tiny, disjointed hints that, when combined, support a theory that is quickly gaining traction. An supposed old social media account connected to Joseph Giuliano, the man internet sleuths associate with Meghan Markle during her college years, is at the heart of this online search. According to screenshots making the rounds on forums, the profile picture shows Giuliano with a young woman of mixed origin. A message from years ago that purportedly refers to a young person by name in an endearing manner, implying a familial connection, is more remarkable. The material spread swiftly before vanishing, although none of this has been independently confirmed. Suspicion grew after that disappearance. The account in question was either removed, renamed, or stripped of personal photographs shortly after the screenshots received notice. Instead, a neutral logo and businesslike presentation were used. This meant nothing to skeptics. Professionals in particular always maintain a clean online profile. However, it appeared to believers that evidence was being removed in real time. The removal didn't stop rumors. It made it louder. The Streisand effect enters the picture here. Named for the phenomena that knowledge that is suppressed merely becomes more apparent. There was a pattern to the situation. Just because it disappeared, content that may have gone ignored suddenly became widely popular. Versions from the past were reposted. Screenshots increased in number. Users claimed visual parallels between historical photographs and public images, which stoked more discussion. Digital detectives contend that there would be no justification for deleting the pictures if they were completely innocent. Opponents argue that this reasoning is incorrect, citing harassment and privacy issues as legitimate justifications for account lockdowns. However, every action is viewed through a suspicious lens in disputes motivated by mistrust. Silence turns into hiding. Cleaning turns into verification. Here, the internet plays a potent and perilous role. It makes research more accessible by enabling anybody to participate, but it also makes it harder to distinguish between fact and conjecture. Screenshots are editable. It is possible to lose context. Within hours, a single speculative post can become widely accepted. However, once a story takes hold, it is often impossible to turn it back. The endurance of these digital breadcrumbs, rather than their dependability, is what makes them so alluring. They never stop circulating, cut off from their original source and leaving room for interpretation. Additionally, they have persisted in the collective imagination because no authorized explanation has explicitly addressed them. The internet did not find evidence in this instance. It generated momentum. And in a narrative that is already characterized by silences and gaps, that momentum has developed into an independent force that intensifies each time something vanishes rather than being clarified. Why did Meghan Markle's family not appear at her own wedding if the internet filled in the blanks? To find out, keep watching. The family was not invited to the wedding. On May 19, 2018, the scene was perfect as the cameras moved over St. George's Chapel. One side was occupied by the royals. The other was full with international celebrities. And there was just one person sitting by Meghan Markle's side. Doria Ragland, her mother. No aunts, uncles, cousins, father, or half-siblings. An entire family line is represented by a single parent. It was presented as restrained and respectful at the time. It appeared intentional in retrospect. The official explanation emphasized estrangement and humiliation. Thomas Markle missed the event because of health problems after a heart scare that were made worse by the scandal over manufactured paparazzi pictures. Samantha Markle and Thomas Markle Jr., her half-siblings, were shown as erratic and antagonistic, making them unfit to attend a major international gathering. Many viewers were momentarily satisfied by that explanation, but it falls short in describing the scope and accuracy of the exclusion. Usually, embarrassment can be completely erased. Even extremely tense households typically have at least one representative, someone who sits quietly and is well managed. Such an endeavor did not exist here. All paternal relatives were completely eliminated from the picture. This was not emotional distance, according to critics. It was a containment strategy. Doria Ragland's presence simply made that contrast more pronounced. It was remarkable, almost symbolic, to see her alone. She was silent, calm, and respectful. But there were concerns about her seclusion. Why was she the only member of the family who was accepted? Why was one half of Meghan's family kept intact while the other was shut down entirely? Internet users started to speculate that Doria's inclusion was motivated by control as much as proximity. She was the only relative whose tale fit Meghan's public persona perfectly and whose silence could be trusted. Because of this framing, the wedding becomes more strategically oriented rather than a story about strained family ties. Instead of calling it an arrangement, some experts refer to it as a quarantine. According to this interpretation, paternal relatives were removed because they were unpredictable rather than because they were embarrassing. They contained stories, time frames, and experiences that were impossible to practice. Any careless remark or unguarded comment may have undermined the carefully crafted picture that was showcased to the globe that day. This idea is supported by the visitor list. Celebrities like Serena Williams, George and Amal Clooney, and Oprah Winfrey took the role of blood family. People who don't have a common past and have no motive to talk about anything other than accepted tales. Here, loyalty wasn't familial. It depended on the circumstances. These witnesses were safe. When viewed in this light, the wedding becomes more about choice than absence. who was kept away from the spotlight and who was permitted to get close to it. Because Doria Raglan was consistent with the narrative, her presence was not questioned. No one else did. The wedding is still at the center of the debate because of this. It wasn't just who wasn't there. It was the extent to which they were kept out and the meticulousness with which the surroundings were managed. Critics question why the guest list resembled a perimeter rather than a family get-together if there was nothing to conceal. What happens, then, when Prince Harry's core convictions about loyalty and truth clash with the wedding's emphasis on control? You'll be shocked by what follows, so don't blink. Harry's personal reconciliation with Prince Harry. There is much more to this accusation than just public outrage. It goes right to the heart of his understanding of truth, loyalty, and the decisions that changed his life. Although Harry has previously withstood criticism, this time is different. Palace insiders and tabloids are not attacking. This assertion calls into question the personal basis around which he constructed his post-royal identity. History is what sets this hit apart. Trauma has influenced Harry's perspective, especially the death of his mother and the conviction that silence, deceit, and concealment may ruin lives. He has discussed the emotional cost of defending false narratives and the harm caused by hidden realities on numerous occasions over the years. He presented his exit from the royal life as a denial of those trends. His declared ideals were openness, honesty, and transparency. This allegation becomes more than just a marital matter because of that circumstances. It becomes a moral litmus test. According to insiders, Harry's immediate reaction was one of disbelief rather than rage. He is forced to face a very unsettling possibility when he considers how much of his wife's past might have been hidden. Not only was he deceived, but it's possible that he unintentionally supported a partial version of reality. That discovery would be heartbreaking for someone who gave up national duty, public status, and family ties in the name of truth. This is the point at which sacrifice and trust clash. For his marriage, Harry sacrificed more than most people would ever. He broke off contact with his siblings and father. He abandoned his position, his nation, and the institutional safeguards he had previously decried but depended on. He believed that a common dedication to integrity justified those sacrifices. The price of those choices is made painfully evident if that commitment is now in doubt. Whether or if the accusation is true is not the only internal debate. It concerns Harry's ability to reconcile the man he sees himself as with the likelihood that he disregarded warning signals or chose to remain silent when clarification was required. Belief in the person you love is a prerequisite for trust. Accountability to your own values is a prerequisite for integrity. When the stakes are this great, juggling the two becomes almost impossible. Those with knowledge of the matter say Harry's reckoning has been passionate, heated, and secretive. According to reports, he is doubting not just his marriage but also the series of choices that brought him to this point. He runs the risk of confirming the accusation if he speaks. He runs the risk of compromising the values he has openly defended if he remains silent. He now has to deal with that trap. This has nothing to do with picking sides in a family conflict. It is about making a decision between truth and belief, between a partner's commitment and the principles that previously forced him to abandon everything he knew. Is this the calm before a planned departure, or is it still a marriage when quiet bargaining and private uncertainty coexist? Remain with us. Quietly negotiate marriage. According to insiders, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage has reached a period that is less characterized by emotion and more by calculating, away from cameras and public comments. This is where whispers of a divorce start to circulate, not because of any overt conflict but rather because of how planned and controlled everything seems to be. Couples who argue emotionally are prone to fractures. Silence becomes a tactic when couples argue. Conversations, according to those close to the situation, are now focused on results rather than comfort or reconciliation. Time is of the essence. Right now, any official split would conflict with ongoing initiatives, public perceptions, and long-term brand positioning. For this reason, conjecture suggests planning rather than spontaneity. Not peace, but a respite, according to insiders. A pattern of holding that is not intended to preserve the connection but rather to minimize harm. The reason divorce rumors persist is because of this calculated tone. There haven't been any strong denials or coordinated public appearances to allay rumors. Rather, there is a discernible lack of unified messaging, distancing, and cautious phrasing. These are recognizable signs of controlled disengagement rather than collapse to onlookers used to high-profile separations. It is thought that one of the most delicate topics being discussed is custody. Their children would unavoidably be the focus of attention during any separation, something that both sides are apparently eager to avoid. Given Harry's complex relationship with his own public youth, decisions like housing, education, and public exposure are extremely important. This is about stopping history from happening again, not just about parenting. Another silent battlefield is identity and titles. Although titles may not be legally disputed, reputation has a significant impact on how they are used, presented, and relevant in the future. They serve as a reminder of what Harry left behind. They continue to be essential to Meghan's international prominence. According to insiders, conversations are more about appearances than legalities. How each comes out of this chapter unscathed. Everything is based on reputation management. Any mistake could change public opinion forever. A hasty split would encourage guilt conjecture or rumors to be confirmed. Both parties are able to shift their positions and place more emphasis on responsibility, privacy, and dignity than on conflict when the decision is carefully framed and delayed. Emotion seems secondary as a result. The stakes are too great to make snap judgments. These tales paint a picture of two people skillfully navigating an escape rather than a spectacular collapse. Insiders say that if this marriage does collapse, it won't do so very publicly. Statements, deadlines, and well-managed distance will all play a part in how it develops. The most obvious sign yet that whatever formerly emotionally bonded them is now being evaluated, weighed, and perhaps put aside in favor of survival can be found in that silent negotiation. Why does this tremble more than a union? This accusation has repercussions that go much beyond the personal boundaries of a tense relationship. The effect on Prince Harry's public persona might be significant. He has positioned himself for years as an honest person who is prepared to face difficult truths and will not keep quiet no matter what. Critics will contend that his dedication to transparency amounted to selective silence if he is perceived as denying or sidestepping a claim of this size. In this instance, he runs the risk of jeopardizing the very reputation he used to establish his post-royal life. It is impossible to overlook the institutional ramifications as well. Harry is still closely associated with the British monarchy even though he is no longer a working royal. Senior family member-related disputes invariably have an impact on the institution as a whole. The very myths that the monarchy has long tried to escape are revived by accusations of secrecy, secret histories, and moral responsibility. Harry's decisions have an impact on how the public perceives royal judgment, screening, and internal decision-making, even when viewed from a distance. This arrangement creates an awkward conundrum for the monarchy. Some people may subtly feel validated, thinking their initial worries were well-founded. However, this is not a victory. The perception of disarray within the royal family is further enhanced by any scandal involving Harry. Regardless of how distant they seem, it perpetuates the idea of a shattered organization incapable of controlling or resolving its own issue. For this reason, everything would alter if there was proof or denial. Concrete evidence would compel an irreparable reckoning, instantly altering reputations and bringing unavoidable legal, ethical, and public repercussions. On the other hand, a convincing denial may put an end to rumors and recast the entire experience as a warning about digital fixation and rumor culture. But nobody benefits from ambiguity. It permits uncertainty to spread. Without clarity, the story becomes bigger than any one individual. It turns into a matter of power, trust, and the price of remaining silent. And this debate will continue to cast a shadow over everything based on the promise of truth, not only marriages, until that silence is broken in one way or another. What do you think, then? Will Harry tell the truth while maintaining his reputation? Or will he remain silent while the monarchy is overtaken by scandal and doubt? We want to know what you think. Remember to share them below.